Welcome y'all to Robin on the Farm. Today I'm making 1 hour yeast rolls. These rolls are so good and so easy to make, and they really are ready from start to finish in just 1 hour. You are gonna love these. So let's just get started on the recipe. I'm gonna start with 2 cups of lukewarm water. So you want this to be about 100 to 110 degrees. That's the perfect temperature for your yeast. Not too cool, not too hot to kill it. So I'm gonna use this really awesome Zacme stand mixer. You can use any stand mixer. You can make these by hand if you want to, but this just makes it really easy. So just go ahead and put your water right on into your bowl. And next we want some sugar. I'm gonna use a 1/4 cup of just this white sugar, but you can also use a 1/4 cup of honey, maple syrup, monk fruit, whatever you want. But sugar's just easy and it tastes really good in these rolls. So add that to your water. And next we want some yeast. I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of this yeast. This is SAF instant yeast, but you can also use active dry yeast, rapid rise, whatever you wanna use. It'll work just fine in this recipe. So 2 tablespoons, and I'm just gonna sprinkle it right on top of my water and my sugar. I always keep my yeast in the freezer, and I get it out right in time to make bread. I don't have to let it come to room temperature or anything like that. And then I stick it back in the freezer and my yeast will last forever that way. It'll last many, many years past the expiration. So that's how I recommend storing your yeast. And our next ingredient for these 1 hour rolls is some butter. You can also use oil. Either one will work just fine, and I switch off. Sometimes I make this with butter, sometimes I make it with oil. But I'm gonna use 1/2 cup of melted butter. So that's 1 stick of butter, or you can use 1/2 cup of any kind of oil that you want. I oftentimes use coconut oil or sunflower oil or even a light tasting olive oil. But it's good either way, butter or oil. Now it's time for the flour. I buy my flour in big 25-pound bags and then store them in these big 5-gallon buckets, and then I put these gamma lids on top. These twist off so it keeps the flour nice and fresh and keeps anything gross from getting into my flour. I've found that that's the most economical way to buy flour. So if you're doing a lot of baking, look into that. Big 25-pound bags stored in these buckets. That's what I like to do. Now, for this recipe, I'm gonna use 6 to 6.5 cups of flour. This is bread flour. I like bread flour better. It has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour, so you'll get a better rise for your rolls and your breads that you make. So you'll end up with softer, fluffier bread and rolls. So that's what I'm going for today. So I'm gonna start with 6 cups of this flour, and then as it's mixing, if it needs a little bit more, if it's looking a little too wet, then I'm gonna add a little bit more flour. So it could be 6 to 6.5 cups. And really it all depends on your weather, your climate, the temperature in your home. So many things depend on how much flour you need. So it's definitely best to look at your flour as it starts to mix and add a little bit more flour or add a little bit more water. But just to keep it simple, start with 6 cups and then add a little bit more if you need it. So I'm just gonna put 6 cups right on into my mixing bowl of my mixer. Now I have 6 cups of flour in the mixing bowl of my stand mixer, and I forgot to mention, I am making this recipe using cups and spoons, but down in the description, I'll also leave the printable recipe, and I'll leave the recipe in grams also, if you like to bake better that way. Now it's time for our next ingredient. I'm gonna use this instant milk powder. Now, if you don't have any of this, you can also just substitute some of the water out for some milk. I'll leave that down in the recipe also. But when you use instant milk powder, it gives you softer, fluffier breads in any baked goods that you use it in. So I love using this in my baked goods. I keep it in my food storage for emergencies, but I mainly use it in my breads. So this is great to have on hand. So for this recipe, I am gonna use 2/3 of a cup of this instant dry milk powder. Now it comes in non-fat dry milk powder and also a full fat dry milk powder. Either one works just fine. It's easier to find it in this non-fat dry milk powder just because it lasts longer, but I really like the full fat kind, but today I just have the non-fat. So I'm gonna use 2/3 of a cup of this instant milk powder. I'm just gonna put it right on in there with everything else. And our very last ingredient for our 1 hour rolls is some salt. I really love this Redmond's Real Salt. This is an ancient fine sea salt mined in North America. So I think it's pretty neat, and it's pink. It's kind of like the pink Himalayan sea salt. but it's from North America, so that's pretty cool. Now I'm gonna use 2 teaspoons of salt. If you don't have any of this, that's okay. You can use plain old white iodized table salt. You can use the pink Himalayan sea salt. Anything will work just fine. But you want 2 teaspoons. Definitely pour it away from your bowl because this is your very last ingredient and you definitely don't want to over pour and ruin all of your other ingredients. So 2 teaspoons right on in there with everything else. And those are already all of the ingredients for our 1-hour rolls. There's only 7 ingredients. Super simple, easy to make. Now it's time to get this kneading. This is my new Zacme stand mixer. My friend Rhoda recommended this mixer to me and it had never been on my radar. I'm used to Bosch's and KitchenAid's, but this is really the best of both worlds. I love that it's a stand mixer. It's got a stainless steel bowl, stainless steel attachments, and it has an 800-watt motor, so it has a really nice, strong motor, which is great for me because I like making 4 loaves of bread at a time, and this can handle that. I also make a lot of fresh milled flour breads, and it's strong enough for those fresh milled flours. For these 1-hour rolls, I'm gonna let this dough knead for 5 minutes on speed 2 if you have a Zacme or a KitchenAid or a Bosch, or that's about medium-low on any other kind of stand mixer. But in just a minute, after all of these ingredients get incorporated, I'm gonna check on my ball of dough. And if it looks a little bit wet, I'm gonna add a little bit more flour, up to another 1/2 cup. But I'll show you exactly what your dough should look like. Now, I'm gonna let this go for 5 minutes. And another cool thing that this mixer has is a timer. So I'm gonna set my timer for 5 minutes, and it's gonna knead for 5 minutes, and then it's gonna turn off, which is so awesome because there have been so many times where I've walked away from my mixer while it was kneading and come back 30 minutes later just to find it still kneading. So that's pretty bad, but that won't happen with this mixer. So I'm gonna turn this on for 5 minutes on speed 2. And I'll show you in just a minute what your dough should look like. My mixer has been going for about a minute and it's already incorporated all of the ingredients really well and it's starting to knead my dough. Look at that, the ball of dough looks perfect. It's not too wet. If it was, it would be sticking to the sides and to the bottom of this mixing bowl. It also doesn't look too dry because it's come together into this nice ball of dough. So if you need to add a little bit more flour, go ahead and do that now. If yours is looking really dry and crumbly, go ahead and add about a tablespoon of water. But this looks great. Now, do you see that light that shines down into that bowl? Oh, that is my favorite thing about this mixer. This dough kneaded for exactly 5 minutes. Now, normally I wouldn't get it out of the bowl, but I'm gonna go ahead and get it out today just so you can see what the dough should look like. There we go. See, I can handle it. It's not too sticky. It's tacky, so it's not dry, but it just is perfect. You can stretch it a little bit. That just lets you know that your gluten is really well developed. So this dough looks great. I'm just gonna throw it back into my bowl and I'm gonna cover it with a warm, wet tea towel. Now, I'm gonna let this dough rise for 20 minutes, exactly 20 minutes. That's all it's gonna take for these 1-hour rolls. So in 20 minutes, it's gonna be time to punch down our dough and shape them into rolls, and I'll show it to you then. My dough has been rising for exactly 20 minutes, so it's time to check it out. Oh, it looks great. You can see that it's risen, it's expanded. This is exactly what you want your dough to look like. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and punch down my dough. So you're literally going to punch down your dough and this will deflate it. And I hate doing that because the dough looks so pretty and risen, but it's okay. All right, once you have it punched down, then go ahead and turn it out from your bowl. There we go. Now I'm gonna take this dough and I'm just gonna press it out with my hands. Press it out, press it out. You wanna get all those little air bubbles out of it and just really deflate it really well. This will give you a better texture to your rolls. Okay, now that it's all pressed out, I'm gonna take my dough cutter and I'm gonna divide this dough into 6 pieces. Now I forgot to mention, this recipe makes 24 rolls. So if you don't wanna make that many, you can definitely divide this recipe in half and only make 12 rolls. I'll include that in the recipe too if you only wanna make 12. But I'm gonna divide this dough into 6 pieces, and then I'm gonna divide each of those pieces into 4 pieces, and that'll be 24 rolls. Now, if you want to, you can get out your kitchen scale, weigh each one, and make sure they're all the same size. But I don't really care to do that, so I'm not gonna do that, but you definitely can if you'd like to. Now at this point, you want to go ahead and get your oven preheating to 350 degrees. Pretty soon these are going to be ready to throw into the oven, and you want to be sure that your oven is ready. For these 24 rolls, we're going to need 2 9x13 baking dishes. This is my all-time favorite. This is my Lodge cast iron 9x13 baking dish. I love it. It's heavy duty, it's indestructible, it doesn't have any of those coatings that are going to get into our foods. I poured about a tablespoon of olive oil into this baking dish, and I just rubbed it all around with a paper towel. So it's oiled up and it's ready to go, and these rolls won't stick at all. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use my second favorite baking dish because I only have one of these. I need to get another one of these. But I also really love this USA pan. This is a 9x13 cake pan, and it's non-stick. I don't even have to oil this up or grease it or spray it or anything. These rolls won't stick to this. So I'm gonna use this cast iron and this USA baking pan. They're both great. I recommend both of these. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna take one of these 24 pieces, and I'm just gonna shape it into a roll. I just like to kind of fold it over, pinch it at the bottom. That'll just give you a really pretty rounded roll on the top. So that's what I do. And then I'm just gonna put it into my baking dish, and I'm gonna do this 24 times. I'm gonna try to show you up close how I shape these rolls. So I have one of the 24 pieces, and I'm just gonna go like this. Fold it over, and then pinch it all together at the bottom. And then there you go. You have this really pretty little round roll. Now I have all of my rolls shaped and in the baking pans, and these rolls are ready to throw into the oven already. So I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. I'm gonna throw these rolls in, and I'm gonna let them bake for about 22 to 25 minutes, just depending on how brown you want the tops to get. I'll show them to you when they're ready to get out. All right, y'all, our 1 hour rolls are fresh out of the oven. Look how good they look. These baked at 350 degrees for 22 minutes. Now it'll totally depend on your oven, but I'd say somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes, just until they're nice and brown and as dark as you want them. Now that they're out of the oven, I like to brush a little bit of melted butter on top of my rolls. I just melted just a little bit of butter, and now I'm just gonna brush them on top, and this will just give them that really pretty shine and that really good buttery flavor. It'll also make them a little bit more soft, which I like. So it took about 5 minutes to measure out all the ingredients. Then we let the mixer knead the dough for 5 minutes. Then we covered the dough and let it rise for 20 minutes. Then I divided the dough into 24 rolls. That took about 5 minutes. And then we baked these rolls for 22 minutes. So in total, that is just under 1 hour for these 1 hour yeast rolls. And aren't they beautiful? I wanted to be sure that you could see this roll really well. Look what a pretty color it is. It's nice and brown. The bottom is browned nicely. It's light and fluffy. I wish that you could hold this. I wish that you could smell this, because these rolls turned out fantastic. Now let's check out the inside. Look at that. Perfect roll inside. That looks fantastic. It's such a good texture, and it doesn't even need that second rise. So that's why these are such good 1 hour rolls. Okay, I'm gonna take a little bite. Amazing. They taste so good. Now that I've eaten a couple of these rolls and let them cool a bit, I've stored them in one of my beeswax bread bags. My daughters and I make these together. These are naturally antibacterial, and they help keep your bread fresh and keep it from molding. If you're looking for a better way to store your bread without the use of plastic, these are a great option. I will leave the link to these and also the printable recipe for these 1 hour rolls down in the description and on my website, robinonthefarm.com. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'll see you next time.
Robin's in the kitchen, dough beneath her hands, wheat from the fields and eggs from her land. Sunlight through the window, a warm golden glow. She's working hard to make that dough. With flour on her apron, loving each need, ground wheat fresh, sowing her seed. The smell of fresh bread rises in the air. Simple life without a care.